Hi everyone, this is Professor Nancy Mahan. In my previous video, we talked about how do you add and subtract fractions with the same denominators and how do you simplify those fractions. Next up in this video, we are going to talk about how do you add or subtract fractions, but now with different denominators. So here in this problem, and if you have your worksheet, it's right here, question number 2. Notice the question is 9/10 minus 7/8. So again, the verb is still minus. And when I see minus and I look at the denominator, then I notice that 10 and 8, the denominators, they are not the same. So I say, this means I got to do work. I can't just add or subtract them as is. So what happens when you add or subtract fractions with different denominators? So like this problem here. So what you got to do, so first I look, we always need to check. So check the operation first. So since I noticed that this is a subtraction operation, then I realized, okay, then I need to pull up my rules of what do you do when you subtract fractions, whether you add or subtract. And the rule is that we can only combine fractions with the same denominator. So that is the rule. So they have to be the same in order for you to add or subtract it. So if you remember the problem that we just did in a previous video, when we are adding fractions, you're adding, you want to add pieces of, you want to add pizzas or pies, which have the same amount of pieces cut up, right? So you want, so like in this problem, 1/9 plus 5/9, you're dealing with the same size pizza, in other words. So here in this problem, when I look at this, I say, so here, if they're different denominators, we need to do some work, okay? So we say, okay, I got to do some work. It's not going to be easy peasy anymore, right? So what you got to do, and what I love about mathematics is that you have the power to manipulate numbers and get the power to change these fractions into something that works for you. So if they're different denominators, you are going to create common denominators. So, right, if they're different denominators, then you will need to do work to find the common denominator. So what is the common denominator between the numbers 10 and 8? And this is what we call the lowest common denominator, or the least common denominator. Least common denominator. And for short, you could call it the LCD, right? In life, we always have acronyms for everything. So same with mathematics, we have acronyms for words that we use quite often. So we need to find the LCD, or the least common denominator. So in this problem here, the number 10 and 8, I want to ask myself, what is the least common denominator between 10 and 8? In other words, what is the lowest common multiple? So I kind of think to myself, what is the lowest common multiple that the number 10 and 8 have with each other? So what multiple do they have in common? Well, so if I think of the number 10, the multiples of 10, so I think in my mind here, the multiples of 10 are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, yada, yada, okay? It keeps going on and on. And then I ask myself, well, what are the multiples of 8? The multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, yada, yada. It keeps going on and on. And in mathematics, it is really important to know your multiplication table. So if you're weak in that, make sure you review it. So the lowest common denominator between 8 and 10 is the number that they both have in common that's the lowest. So when I look through here, I notice, what number do they both have in common? The number 40, right? So the number 40 is something they both have in common. They eventually also have the number 80 in common as well, but 80 is not the lowest common denominator, 40 is. It's okay if you end up saying 80 because you just have to do more work of simplifying the fraction in the end, the answer, but it's better to work with the lowest common denominator. So 40 is the lowest common denominator in this problem. So here, 40 is the number that I want. So I want the I want to make each of these fractions have a 40. So here is how you do it. So we're going to write the equivalent fractions with the LCD 40. Right? So we want the number 40 now in the denominator. So now let's just look at the number 9/10. I'm going to just do one at a time. So the number 9/10, I am going to manipulate this number to make it have a 40 in the end. So if I do that, in order to go from 9/10 to 40, right? To go from 9/10 to 40, what did I need to do? What do I need to multiply by to get to 40? We needed to multiply by 4, right? So here I needed to multiply by 4 in order to get 40. And the thing with math is it's very much about justice. Whatever you do to one thing, you got to do to the other thing. So if you multiply by 4 in the denominator, you got to multiply by 4 in the numerator, right? Whatever you do to one to the bottom, you must do the top. That's one of the common rules of mathematics. So here, if I multiply by 4 in the bottom, I get 40. If I multiply by 4 on top, I get 36, right? So now this 9/10 has now become 36 over 40, okay? So these are what we call equivalent fractions. They're the same fraction, it's a bigger version of that one, right? 7/8. Let's look at the number 7/8. So I want to rewrite this so that it has the number 40 in the denominator. So I ask myself, well, what number do I need to multiply by to get to the number 40? And the answer is 5. So I multiply by 5 to get to 40. So whatever you do on bottom, you must do to the top. So you multiply with 5 on top, you end up getting 35. So this is the equivalent fraction to 7/8. So now when I rewrite this problem, here, instead of writing 9/10 minus 7/8, I'm going to write down its equivalent fractions. 9/10 is now manipulated to be 36 over 40 minus, instead of 7/8, we have 35 over 40. And ta-da! You now have same denominators. And now that you have the same denominators, then you could go back to the rules that we talked about in a previous video, that if the denominators are the same, then we can add or subtract the numerators together. We keep the denominators the same, right? So here, denominators are the same, so we're working with the same pizzas that are cut into the same amount of pieces, in other words. So I cut it. So when I do 36 minus 35, I get 1, because I subtract the numerator, and the denominator, I keep it the same. And then this is already simplified. So therefore, question number 2, the answer is 1 over 40.